Tenable Network Security, creators of Nessus, the world's best vulnerability scanner. Jumpstart your security program today and evaluate Security Center CV, the continuous monitoring solution. For more information, visit them on the web at tenable.com. ProXPN is the leading VPN service offering free accounts, excellent premium features, and an outstanding commitment to privacy and security online. Use the discount code WEEKLY and save 50% off for life. NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with a proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email them at contact@netsparker.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Security Weekly. This is the security news for this week. And there was a big vulnerability with a logo and a name that turned out to be not so exciting. Joff is laughing.
Well, it's a valid vuln, just not what we expected.
Can we just say, like, over-marketed, maybe?
Yes.
You know? I think, once you start assigning sexy logos, there's a certain expectation that people have, and when it doesn't get met, it just doesn't work,
Yeah, when we look at the vulnerability itself, Badlock, we're talking here about Badlock, right?
Yes, or Sadlock, as I've seen it called.
Yes. Sadlock.
All of us were actually expecting it to be this, through all of the hype that it got and that it was so awful and was so ugly, that it was going to be this awesome remote code execution bug a la MSO8 67, and it wasn't. What it actually turned out is it is a kind of a man-in-the-middle attack. We all know SMB. It's used by SEMBA, specifically SMB1 and everything. So when we look at it, we can actually sign and encrypt our traffic, but it turns out that it's only doing it for the SMB traffic that is for files. When we look at the other protocols that actually use or run over SMB, we have one that is called Security Account Manager Remote something. SAMR. It's how Microsoft calls it. SAMR. Then there's another one, which is the Local Security Authority Remote Protocol. What those two protocols actually do is via RPC is what lets you control the local account database on that box. It lets you manage that. So the way the attack works is I do a man-in-the-middle session against a box, preferably a domain controller, where I get a domain admin or a local admin to that box to log into it. Then what I will do is I will modify his connection, change its status. I don't care if it is Kerberos or if it is negotiating NTLM, because since I'm doing the man-in-the-middle connect and it's not signed or encrypted, I can actually modify it and change it to a connect type connection. I can then take control, impersonating that domain admin or local admin, to either extract all of the hashes out of that SAM database if it is local, or extract all of the hashes if it is domain controller, or it will let me impersonate several different types of commands where it will let me change, modify, add accounts, and do other stuff. So it is a very nasty type of attack. Now, when we look at this, we're talking about environments that are actually running Active Directory. We're talking about environments that are using SMB1, preferably. We're talking about environments that do their switches are not very well configured to block ARP spoofing. They're not using DHCP guard. They're not using a bunch of other controls, which is going to be about 80 or more % of your corporate networks out there. So it requires a bit of prep work. It is still bad. It is something that I would say don't, if you're going to patch it, don't leave it more than a week before you do all of your testing and patching, because it is still critical. It is still It is still a very nasty type of attack. I think it has had a CVSS score of 7. It is still valid, but it's not what was marketed. It is not what was so hyped. It is not that uber remote code execution bug that we were waiting for.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay.
That pretty much sums that up.
Yep.
Nice job, Carlos.
Yeah, I had to deal a lot with it at work, and people going like, no, we have to have coverage for this. Oh no,
Right.
this is
We
so
need
critical,
a
and you go like,
blog post
no.
in a podcast, in a
Yeah,
press release.
and I was going like, sit down, breathe, take your paper back, go like this, put something smoky in it, do whatever you need. It's not that critical. Now there are some other vulnerabilities that came out that are very nasty.
Right.
Like one for Office, but Office will load a DLL, where the only thing I have to do is create a web dev chair, put my Office document there. I'll put my interpreter or Cobalt Strike Beacon DLL wherever I want with it, and make sure that it gets loaded. I sent you a link to that file. You double click on it, automatically it gets mounted as the web app chair, and it loads that DLL for me, and boom, I have a shell on your box. Now that's another one.
Right. Yeah, there was some interesting. It was an
fun.
interesting Microsoft Patch Tuesday from what I read very briefly.
Yeah, there were some other nasty ones that I would have gone like patch that immediately.
Right.
And then because for this one, for Badlock, there are some mitigations that I can actually take. For example, the easiest one out there, disable SMB v1.
Yep.
The other one that will make it even harder, enable SMB signing and enforce encryption for all machines in the network. This will automatically prevent SMB relay types of attack, so it minimizes that exposure risk that you're going to have. The other one is, just as Lee, our guest, mentioned, is that you need to have those basic stuff in your network. You need to have those protection in your switches, where you have DHCP guard. You're preventing your MAC tables to be overflooded in your switch. You're protecting both IPv4 and IPv6 with your switches. If not, upgrade your switches. If you're in a wireless environment, hey, if you're running open wireless, fuck you. Put WPA to enterprise at least, or WPA PSK. That will actually prevent and mitigate a bit of those man-in-the-middle types of attacks if you're going via wireless. I'm tired and sick of seeing people going into airplane. No, we're secure. Oh, this is secure. I go in. It's an open wireless. Yeah, but people VPN in. Okay. And what if the VPN doesn't work? Oh, we still offer a couple of services. And like, then you're still exposed.
Yeah. But hey, what if we man in the middle of the DNS record for the VPN when they're trying to connect to it? It's like, yeah, it works. Sure.
The most hilarious story that I read this week, where there were several radio stations, some reported from Texas, that were hacked because they were using a barracks receiver, and apparently barracks, so according to the report, barracks clients didn't update the software, which left them vulnerable to an attack. The attackers decided to compromise these streaming servers, which controlled the content that was broadcast over FCC-regulated radio, and replace it with a podcast about furries.
A stream from them, from the furries.
Yeah, streamed the podcast about furries over the radio stations in
and it was one of those,
That's hysterical.
for those of you who don't know what furries are, those are a couple of furry, of people with some very serious problems.
It's a fetish. I describe it as a fetish. Although, Carlos, to your point, the furry group Furcast describes itself as an improv comedy-themed furry podcast with no censor, and denies that its main aim is to create sexual material.
It is a masturbation fest, if you heard any of those.
It's a fetish.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the lawyers told him to put that up.
Yeah, if you heard some of the clips, that went out in the hack, it is a masturbation fest.
I need to go. I haven't. I didn't have time to go find it and listen. But according to the Furcast, they say we have no interest in being discovered by a mainstream audience, which is just hilarious.
The Furcast. Oh,
That's the Furcast, John.
Yeah.
You don't
Can
listen
you
to this in your
imagine-
regular podcast listening.
Can you imagine your days back at the university going like hearing about that and all of a sudden go like, let me do a couple of filters and locks for those IP addresses.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, look who's a furry.
No. Actually, those are the kinds of things that you tried not to do because then you catch some sort of high-level execs, and it's bad. It goes
Even better.
bad from there.
Salary raise.
Now Jack is pretty furry, but that's different.
Yes. Very different.
Very
Yeah,
different.
the day we see Jack with a blue or neon pink full beard, that's when I.
He's furry in an attractive to other women kind of way.
That's right. I think Jack has his own fetish. It's the Jack Daniel fetish.
No comment.
I've got
Are
a
you there,
Jack.
Jack?
I've
Jack,
got
I
a.
couldn't-
I've got a Jack Daniel fetish right now.
Yeah. I do have friends that their goal in life is to touch Jack's beard for some reason. But
It's true. There's a lot of people with that goal.
That is,
Yep.
my beard has fetishes. I don't.
has his own fan club.
His beard wants to touch his own chin.
Hey, so what's going on to CyberUL? Joff, you and I were talking earlier about this.
Yeah,
I don't know if we're covering the same story. I read the story in a kind of a positive light because I like to be the optimist when it comes to IoT because I'm tired of talking about
You like to be life affirming, don't you?
the downside of
I didn't
IoT
heard
we've
that news.
covered for so long. I like to think of this as a positive thing, but the
What is
article even
CyberUL?
states like,
Well,
don't get
well-
your hopes up.
So Underwriter Labs is publishing UL 2900, which is a certification supposedly for the security of IoT devices. But when requested by several folks that can we see the standard, they said no. You can pay the $800 for it, but we're not going to let you review it. Is the way I read the story. Okay, I might be completely wrong, but that's the story I read. And so it's like, so you don't want independent security researchers to look?
Don't they even provide an idea like this is the main areas that we cover or something like that?
I don't know. So yeah. So yeah, Mudge weighed in on this one and said the great concern on his behalf, and I paraphrase a little, is the lack of transparency. So I don't know. I suppose give them credit for making it an effort. I wholeheartedly support an effort.
Yeah.
Why is UL wading into this is the question that I wonder.
Well,
I've
because they're
always
a
thought-
certification for safety standards body.
Yeah,
And they
but
created so this is the CAP, the Cyber Security, what is it called? Cybersecurity Assurance Program. Everyone drink. They do state that the UL CAP, which is the cybersecurity certifications, are good for 12 months, and then the products must get recertified by UL unless you made changes to that product within 12 months.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah.
interesting.
Well, maybe I've got this wrong, but I always thought of UL as more of a don't get electrocuted kind of safety.
Right.
Well, then again, a
Yeah.
lot of the IoT stuff is actually dealing with electrical equipment, motors, and stuff. For example, some of this stuff that I have here is connected to my garage door and controls my garage door. Other stuff control light switches.
Yeah. Okay. I'll buy it. But anyway, the
Paul has this auto gun turret connected to an AK-47. So
That's right. It's my
Yeah.
own active defense in my house. What
But
could go wrong?
The quote in my article was something like independent security researchers are welcome to become retail customers of UL just like everybody else. So, okay.
Windows
There it
10 added a new feature, which I think is hilarious that this is a feature. Now,
Yeah, this is awesome.
when your Windows system blue screens, there's a QR code because you can't use your computer because it's blue screen. There's a QR code that pops up that you can scan with your smartphone, which takes you to a web page to tell you more information about what went wrong with your system.
Oh, it's beautiful. And nothing could possibly go wrong with this idea, right?
Yeah, you can operate
Jack, you
directly.
want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, what happens if you're running Windows 10 on your smartphone?
Yeah. What happens? Yeah, if your smartphone crashes and it comes up with a, then what? You got to get.
But there are only 100 people would be affected.
That's true.
What happens if you're scanning the QR code on your tablet, and while you're scanning it, your smartphone crashes and produces another QR code?
that you need to scan.
Yeah, the way I see it is it made me feel old. It made me feel like millennials are taking over. This is the new Microsoft. Like, hey, now we're mobile. Now we're with this.
That's right. We got a QR
I
code.
actually missed the old blue screen with the stack trace and everything.
I do too.
Okay, so in all seriousness, I'm waiting for the first hack that replaces the QR code with a lovely targeted phishing link.
That's where I was going, Joff.
Yeah.
A nice DOS attack that you can launch against several machines at once.
Because you know
drones.
somebody's going to reverse that and work out how to do it.
Yeah.
There was I thought I read an article about cell phones infecting, or something infecting cell phones the other way around. Did I add that story in? Ransomware attack.
I know that there are several Windows.
It was
Android builders.
There was the Apple story I had, Paul. Is that the one you were talking about?
Oh, could
the
be.
breaking one.
Yeah. So I'll go jump in if you want.
Please do.
So this was good. It was a Krebs one. If you set the time on the Apple device back to January 1st, 1970, for those people that are old enough, that is the epoch in Unix terms, it permanently bricks the device. A mind-numbingly simple bug. By the way, just warning everybody, don't try this at home. Here's the bad part. There's this thing called NTP, otherwise known as the Network Time Protocol, that anybody with their own wireless network can choose to advertise NTP set at January 1st, 1970. And if that iPhone comes and associates with your network and you're doing that, you brick the device.
That's awesome.
And to reiterate the key word there, permanent.
Permanent.
And even better, Apple has known about the bug for a while. It has been public. They have issued 2 updates to iOS, and they still have not addressed it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow,
So,
I'm glad I switched from iPhone to Android, although I'm not sure how much better shape I'm in.
Then again, we have 2 other vulnerabilities for Android. One of them that gives me automatic root on your box and lets me pwn it permanently.
Okay, so I'm secretly pleased, though, because if I really get ticked off with my daughter, I can just change the time on my network. Boom, there goes her iPhone.
Yeah,
And
but then
you
you
have
got to
to
buy
pay
her a
for
new one. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like 3 years old at this point anyway.
No,
so-
and there's a way to unbrick it. There's a way to unbrick it. For those of you who were dumb enough to test it out against your iPad.
But wait, I thought it was permanent.
No, if you let the battery completely run out of the device and you recharge it, it will work.
I gotcha.
But if you make the mistake of keeping it charged always, it won't work.
I see.
You actually need to put it somewhere and make sure that the screen stays on and it completely drains for a couple of hours.
Well, so what Carlos is saying is basically you're setting the time back to some sort of reasonable value by doing.
Right. The time resets itself. Right.
Yeah. So yeah,
Well,
but
with
still,
my new Samsung S7, draining the battery wouldn't take very long. So
yeah.
horrible battery life on this
But
phone.
Paul, they
Horrible.
increased the battery life. They're supposed to give you a bigger battery, man.
They gave me a bigger battery, but crappier software that uses more battery than before. So
Dude, you got to take your porno apps off.
I
Man.
guess so.
You should have gotten a Nexus.
Probably should have.
That way you always get the latest software, the latest patch. If you're burnable, you only be burnable for 2-3 months while they work out the patch. In the case of Samsung, it's going to be like a year.
Yeah.
How long do they maintain the Nexus phones, though? Like, how long can I keep the phone before they stop doing updates for them?
Typically 2 years.
2 years. Gotcha.
Well, that's kind of like the default de facto lifetime of phones anyway. It's
It's
like
true.
2 years pretty much, and
And
then
Apple's almost 4 years on their phones.
Oh, here it is.
yeah.
New JavaScript attack infects your phone and changes your router DNS settings,
Ooh, that's a bad
which
one.
I thought was a pretty cool attack. I can
Another
totally-
tech that I like is the one from iMessages. That for some reason Apple decided, hey, we're going to render the text in iMessages using WebKit. I don't know why.
Oh, beautiful.
And then the only thing you have to do is you put a bit of JavaScript into your message, you send it over, it gets rendered with WebKit, and all of a sudden, boom, you get all of their history for the specified user that you give it.
So is this literally a cross-site scripting attack on an iPhone?
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Kind of a cross-site script.
Sort
yeah,
of.
it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah.
You get the entire history of the other chat, and you're going like, "Hey, so this is what you were chatting with so and so about me."
Yet
It's a
another
cross-
thing
it's
I
a-
can
It's
do.
a cross phone scripting attack.
Yeah,
yet-
and the weird side is are they using WebKit to render iMessages?
okay.
Well,
So
because they want iMessage to be easy and implement it so that people stay on the iPhone platform. Which is, did they like sneak in? iMessage seems very sneaky to me. Like what Apple's doing, I don't think they truly tell the general public exactly what's going on there. If you talk to any iPhone user that's not like really, really into tech like we are, they're like, what? It's not really a text message? I'm like, no, it's not really a text message. It's a message over the internet because Apple's intercepting your text messages.
Yeah, if it is blue.
Yes, then there's the color thing, right? Blue versus green, right?
Yeah, and believe it or not, I had a sleepover here at home for some of my daughter's friends, and it turned out that you're not cool if you're green when you're texting each other.
Oh, I see.
You have to be blue. I was going like, really?
wow.
You notice even that thing? Yeah.
I'm gonna have to ask that question of my.
Yeah, because it means you
17-year-old.
don't have an iPhone. You're not on iMessage.
Correct. That you have an Android, and go like, really? That's a thing? Because sadly, the girls were the outies. They were the ones with the green. So they were talking about it, and I was overhearing their conversation that the cool kids were making fun of them because, hey, my oldest is a geek. She actually likes the T-shirts from the Microsoft store that says that she's a geek. Android, not an Android, Minecraft hoodie.
Mm-hmm.
She's always telling me, Daddy, I want to see anime with you. When are we going to see Ghost in the Shell? And go like, no, you need to be a bit older.
Not till you're like 18.
Oh God.
Yeah, and she's now getting into how do they call the comics?
Anime.
Manga.
Manga.
Manga,
Yeah.
yes.
Now she's getting into manga and all of that stuff, and you're going like, you're geekier than your dad.
Well, you're supposed to improve on yourself there, Carlos. So I think you're doing it right. So yeah, how old's your daughter, Carlos?
9.
9. Oh, wow. You
I
got an interesting future in front of you.
Oh yeah, I think when she turns 15, I'll probably for her quinceañera, I'll probably take her to Japan if she's still into all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, there you go.
That's awesome. Is cloud security an exaggerated concern? And this is like an article talking about the age-old debate. And Lee Holmes actually touched on this in our interview.
Yes, he did.
In this episode, and I thought he pretty well covered it. In 2010, there was this interesting IDC article that found that security was the biggest barrier towards adoption of the cloud. And that statistic, he says, has found its way into pretty much every presentation on cloud computing since 2010. And now in 2016, our biggest concern, according to some other study, which I think is kind of interesting to make the comparison between two studies 6 years apart from two different organizations, but the biggest concern now is breaches and not so much security of the cloud.
Yeah, the way I see it is, I give the typical consulting answer. It depends. If you're a small infrastructure that you're having trouble administering your own boxes, securing your own network and stuff, administering Exchange is a pain in the ass. Administering other types of services is a pain in the ass many times. You don't have the time to patch those. You don't have the resources to deal with it. You're a one-man army dealing with everything. Then cloud will probably do quite a bit of risk mitigation for you. It will take care of dealing with spam. It will take care of dealing with bad attachments. In fact, since I've been using Google Apps, I have to say my spam has gone down dramatically. It will. You don't have to take care of
Kidding?
patching
Your
that
spam
that
down?
infrastructure, and it will actually lessen your overhead. Um, but if you're a big organization, and depending what type of organization you are, it introduces new risks. Because right now, according to the DOJ, our government, many other governments, it is no longer your private data. You're giving it to a third party, so that means that they can go to that third party and get your data. So it depends what is part of your risk matrix. Should you be worried from your own government and be a bit paranoid about it, or should you also be worried about what type of data you're putting outside of your network and your
I don't
control?
I don't think that's purely it. I think you've touched on a couple of important points there, Carlos. The other one to me is, and you did touch on this is the capability of the organization in question. If you're a very, very small operation and you're trying to host your own servers, you more than likely do not have the talent or cannot acquire the talent to do it securely, and cloud could be a big plus for you because you've
Yeah.
got all this inbuilt tools to give you the compliance, drink everybody, and security controls that you can just turn on with a switch. You're going to need some education for it, but once you get that education, you're probably going to be in a good place. If you're a medium to large organization, chances are you've got your own staff, including security staff. You're much more aware of your own local contextual needs, and you're going to be very, very selective about what services you may choose to put in the cloud, uh, depending more probably on your operational concerns than your security concerns.
Yeah,
Jack, I'm sorry.
in fact,
Did you want to weigh in this, Jack? I heard you trying to.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. But first, going back to the beginning of this, they like to call them studies. They're not studies. They're surveys.
Hey, Jack, can you turn your volume up a little bit? Sorry. I'm having a little
Maybe?
trouble. Yeah,
Better?
there you go.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
I must have whacked the gain on it. Anyway, first, these are surveys, not studies.
Mhm.
Study implies some sort of rigor. This is some vendor that had an axe to grind, hired somebody to come up with numbers. But yeah, when you talk about cloud, there are all sorts of things. Carlos did a good description. I mean, they're challenges, they're trade-offs, right? And everybody that's afraid of putting stuff in the cloud and doing things horribly themselves, it's like, well, you could offload it, but you do have to actually think about it. The analogy I've been using lately for moving things to cloud, if you haven't thought this out, is it's like, I want a Tesla. And it's like, okay, well, do you take long road trips? Yeah. How far are you from work? Do you have? Is there? You work in an office park where you have a supercharger, or are you gonna have to run an extension cord out from your second floor office to charge it? Is that going to let you get home at night? You have to think about whether or not the trade-offs work for you, and you have to plan and build logistics. And in the case of software, you have to, if you really want to take advantage of cloud, you have to do a lot of automation, and that lets us, build security in. But if you don't do it right, you can, the flip side of it is if you just stuff things into the cloud, you can make the same mistakes we've always made, only at scales and speeds that were unimaginable even a few years ago.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would add to that I turned off my video camera. Didn't mean to do that. I would add to that the comment that I always make as a consultant is, just because you shipped it off to another provider doesn't mean that you removed your responsibility from protecting that data. It's still your responsibility to be the steward of that information that you are managing in your infrastructure, no matter where that infrastructure is.
Yeah, and I like what Jack said. When it comes to cloud, you have two extremes. You have one extreme where if you're a small organization, it takes away a lot of that complexity for you. But once you're really into cloud and you're a bigger organization, you need to be more careful, do more testing, and have another level of skill. It brings you over from having your typical sysadmin kind of skill set to now you're a DevOps type of skill set. You need to do a bit more automation, a bit more of testing, a bit more monitoring. You have to be a bit more on your toes because, as Jack mentioned, it moves very quickly. When you can spin up 100 VMs in around a minute now, and those 100 VMs can cost you thousands of dollars in computing time from a cloud infrastructure, you want to make sure that your process is, oh, I only wanted 20, not 2,000.
Yeah, I agree with Carlos. While you were stating earlier, Carlos, that it takes a lot of, or Joff too, like there's a lot of skill into maintaining systems locally, not in the cloud. But to Carlos's point that you just made was, there's a lot of skill in maintaining stuff in the cloud. And a lot of that also comes down to cost, right? Like there's still a cost to hosting in the cloud. And if you let it get out of control, those can get away from you.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been trying to folks that haven't seen this yet, particularly in this SMB space and smaller businesses that haven't really looked, or folks that haven't taken cloud seriously, is talking about the fact that if you have a applications designed to run in cloud, so you're using microservices, using portable workloads, so you can add and contract as needed by demand. That also means that you can do things like never patch a production box. Right? You spin up new instances, you fully patch them and make sure they run, and then transfer your workloads to a fully patched new instance, and point it back to wherever the data lives. And if it works, great, wonderful. If it doesn't work, you still have the other ones running. You shift the loads back and figure out what went wrong. If it works, great. You shut the other ones down, leave them kicking around for however long it takes you to feel comfortable with the downed machines as a backup. But you never apply a patch to a production device, production instance. There are things like that if you get to that level of automation that are just amazing. And, when you say that, especially in a mixed room like I was at an event yesterday of security people, but also operational people, I'm like, if we do this right, we can get to a point where our cloud instances never get patched in production. And both sides of the room are like, ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
And there are people that are doing that. There are organizations.
So that's very good. That's a very good point. It gives us ability. What you're saying is it gives us abilities that just didn't exist before, which is a lot of flexibility. I mean, flexibility to think about processes in a completely different way.
So, Joff, on a closing note, you wanted to talk about zero-day exploits more than double as reportedly attackers prevail in the security arms race.
Yeah, so this was admittedly a report out of a security vendor, I believe. I think it was Symantec. So in 2015, the report was.
Oh, I thought you said a security vendor.
A vendor.
A vendor claims that 0 days spiked significantly in 2015. And that the real point was that the arms race in that time window between known vulnerability and actual patch existing was being exploited more and more these days. And that 2015, the statistics really pointed that out, that the ability to for lack of a better word, gear up and exploit in that time window by the criminal element was more advanced than it's ever been, and utilized the knowledge that was out there in terms of 0 days.
But they also reported that the total time of exposure for these 0 day exploits or exposures, I guess, was much less in 2015 than it was in 2014. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but.
Yeah, there was also a positive in that the window is tightening up. So I think it reflects just the escalation of the arms race aspect that not only do we have sophisticated adversaries being able to utilize that information very, very quickly. On the defense side, we've also tightened up the window in terms of remediation and patching.
But of course, that also means that everyone knows about this zero-day vulnerability, right? Like, how do you know that window's tightening if people aren't reporting the zero-day vulnerabilities to the vendors?
Right. So there's a fundamental flaw in the logic, right? That's what you're saying, because more than likely they're missing a lot of things. And we've seen that. I mean, you look at, Heartbleed was the classic example. I mean, that's prior to 2015, but it was a classic example where it existed, a good year and a half before it was ever known. And there's probably many, 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 many vulnerabilities of that nature and exploits that are not being reported and being utilized. So the world is not a safe place. What are you going to say?
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And that concludes our stories for this week. I want to thank everyone for participating in this episode of Security Weekly. Thanks to Lee Holmes from Microsoft, Jack, Joff, and Carlos. Thank you all very much for coming on via Skype. We will see everyone next week on Security Weekly. Over and out.